First things first, I want to give a shout out to my Fly Nerd team, um, Moxie, Kochi, Soul Star, and Cosmo Galacticus. I want to give a shout out to y'all. You know what I'm saying? That's the crew. That's Blur Gang right there. So we um we recently released our first episode of the Fly Nerd Primetime, which is our new series that is actually put on it's on Twitch right now, and it's being distributed by Intel Music Group. So I don't have the link right now, but if anybody in the cipher got a can throw that link in there, I'll lock that in so everybody can get access to where they can watch the first episode of Fly Nerd Primetime. Cause man, we gets it in and we go hard. Like y'all don't understand the chemistry, the synergy, the level of information and intelligence that flows, you know what I'm saying, from us. Like man, we some bad motherfuckers. We are some bad motherfuckers. Fly nerds are the shit. So that's all I can say about that. I'm not gonna give y'all too much. I'm just gonna direct y'all there. And again, I want to shout out Intel Music Group for having us, man, because they're the ones that are putting us on their Twitch, and their Twitch already has a massive following. Shout out Mose and the rest of the crew over there. Yeah, Kaz, drop the link. That's what she's saying. Try the shaken espresso with oat milk. Bet. I will try the shaken espresso with oat milk. That sounds like a win-win scenario for me. So, what do we got going on today besides Loki? First of all, Chicago is like 100% open. It's like business as usual. It's back to normal for the new norm. If that makes sense. Like, motherfuckers is out. And I don't know if y'all heard about what's going on like 75th. Like, mofos have turned 75th into the hangout spot. Like, they out and about. They living it up there. They going hard over there. And I ain't mad at them. I mean, mofos been locked up for a minute. But just understand what comes with that possibility when y'all out there like that. Especially there was some shootings in Chicago. So y'all know how that go. But there were shootings and there has been some things jumping off in the world of Chicago summers. So welcome to the heat. Welcome to the fire. And we are here. So let's see. What do we have to talk about today? I don't know. I guess we could talk about Loki. Y'all want to talk about Loki? Loki is a fucking amazing show. Episode 1 of Loki is a bag of cats. It is an insane rabbit hole of what the fuck. I mean, and I guess the simplest way to put it is in terms of Mobius and Mobius himself, Owen Wilson. Wow. Wow. You know, that's how that show gives you a bunch of wows, even though he never gave us a wow. And I appreciate that because I've had enough of his wows over the years. But watching Owen in this episode was like Van Damme. Like Owen really brought his acting chops in this episode. He really demonstrated that like he was on the level. So yeah. And I just found it casually. My 4K Final Fantasy 7 Advent Children. So we'll be watching that soon. Probably maybe we'll watch this over at your spot, Jason, when we do the shindig, when we do the Fly Nerd joint. And I keep y'all posted on what's going on with that event for those who are a part of the crew. But yeah, so Loki, glorious purpose, blessed with glorious purpose. That is exactly what this is about. This is about Loki seeking to fulfill that statement and the struggles that he goes through in trying to get there and trying to go through that motion. What's up, Killer Mike? What's good? I see you. What's up, Jiva? Yeah, the so Loki starts out like, typical like what you expect, where we last saw him in game. So, the whole scenario of him being defeated by the Avengers after his attempt to take over the Earth using the Tesseract and his scepter with the Chitauri army. They whoop his ass, or Hulk whoops his ass particularly, and he's in their grasp. Then time traveling Stark, Ant-Man, and Cap show up, and they try to get the Tesseract in the past, and they try to get the scepter to bring it back to the future so they can defeat you know, young Thanos. And in the midst of all the chaos, the wild card, which is Hulk, um, disrupts the order, and the Tesseract gets free. Loki grabs it, and he's out. So now we're jumping into this insane show where like now we're in uncharted territory. We don't know what the fuck is supposed to happen, right? Like we stepping in, it's like boom. Um, he ends up in the Gobi Desert, Mongolia, and you know he's about to start his spiel about how he's burdened with glorious purpose, and you know he's here to be their king and their ruler, and he's probably gonna get spill about you know freedom from freedom and all that shit that Loki does. And the TVA shows up, the Time Variance Authority, led by Hunter B, which I assume Hunter B is Justice Peace, but they don't use the name Justice Peace. They really don't use a name for this character. For it's Wunmi Mosaku, if I'm saying her name right, Wunmi Mosaku. She's an actress, but yeah, they she shows up as Hunter B. Um, lets Loki know I ain't to be fucked with. Loki says, "Well, I'm Loki. I'm not to be fucked with, and I'm sick of all of y'all motherfucking armored people on this motherfucking plane." And he tries to handle them, and she hits him with like what I call a it's almost like a memory stick. It's a time stick. It hits you, and Loki goes into slow motion, 1/16th scale. And I thought that was an interesting nod to what I project the time variance authority is. 1/16th scale, for those who don't know, is the scale of the average action figure, like the G.I. Joes, like a lot of the action figures that you know about that also 3/4 inch, that's 1/16th scale. And if you think about the idea of when you of them choosing to talk about slow motion and scales, and then of course as we find out later on through the episode when they start getting into the TVA and there's all these time variations and literally time issues within um, the TVA, you kind of got to start to wonder: are they scaled down, as in the quantum realm? Because there's a bunch of conversations that like, oh, time doesn't work here, like that, and time this and time that, and these guys are able to control time in a way that is different. So yeah, 1/16 speed, he's all blah 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 blah. And she's hilariously enjoying it, you know, and she straps him with the collar around his neck. That is a time looper that keeps him unable to escape. And so then they dip through their doors. Now, an interesting nod for these doorways, for those who didn't catch it. When the TVA enter those doorways, there's a famously classic time travel movie where these time guys, time bandits, would go through these doorways that would open up for them to time travel because they had the map of the universe, the cosmic map, and they were doing time heists around the universe for whatever reason. They were angels. But anyway, they opened up when the doors opened up. They were literally open up the way the time variant authority doors open up, and I thought that was an interesting nod to a very classic time travel movie that, for lack of a better word, I think is a perfect it's a perfect time travel movie. Maybe I'll talk about Time Bandits another time. But yeah, so the doors for the TVA open up just like the Time Bandits. So anyway, the TVA then go on and talk about resetting the timeline, and they put this little device down, and bam, what it does is we find that it basically erases this variant timeline that exists. So at this particular point, as it stands, the Loki timeline that was established at the end of Endgame when he grabbed the Tesseract and he dips is no longer, that timeline is gone. So now Loki's now back. He's actually inside of the TVA. He's in the Time Variance Authority's realm or bubble. I'll call it a time bubble because I think it is a time bubble inside of the quantum realm. But first thing you notice in this space, which is pretty awesome, is there's a scroll being another scroll just in there. Like he's another guy that's been accused of affecting the sacred timeline, crimes against the timeline. And what was interesting about this particular scroll that stood out to me, and time will tell whether this is a nod or if this is just an Easter egg or if this was something that's intentional. But this particular scroll was wearing a tracksuit. Now, for those who watch my show, and keep in tune with things Marvel, the Tracksuit Mafia and the Bros are a mob that exists inside of the Hawkeye sphere. So Hawkeye always cross paths with this Tracksuit Mafia. They're actually the thorn in his side that kind of annoy and fuck up his day on a regular basis, and keep him with band-aids and bruises. So seeing this scroll in a tracksuit, which is strange as fuck, for a bunch of different reasons, and why that was chosen makes me think that there's either something correlating to maybe some scrolls in Hawkeye, or just a passive nod like Marvel likes to do to just to make us geeks kind of geek out even more than we're already doing. But nonetheless, the other guy that was in there was the son of a disgruntled son of a Goldman Sachs board member, and like he's just being a jerk, being very pompous, and not the good pompous like me, but he was being the other pompous, which is an asshole. And well, I'm an asshole too, but nonetheless, those two guys are the first people that you see in it that are also deviants, or people who have violated the sacred timeline. Loki tries to run. The collar lets him know right away, you ain't going nowhere. There's a lot of this that plays out exactly how Thor played out when he got to Sakaar. Thor gets caught and then he's restrained. And if you remember a scene where he runs, and then there's the whole conversation about the freaky circle. And we see that Loki is also trapped in a freaky circle where wherever he goes to, it loops him, circles him back to the point from which he started, and they can control that based on the collar that he has on. So I thought that was pretty interesting as a parallel to the experiences that Thor had when he went to this strange place, and suddenly his god magnitude was irrelevant, and he was just another guy, and people around him were equal to him, and in many instances stronger than him, and he was just like, what the fuck, and confused at every turn. So they Loki, after trying to run, Hunter B gives the Tesseract to Casey. Casey's the dweeb, as it were. And then at this point, now Loki's making threats. Oh, you cross me, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah. And she pushes him into this room. In this room is this interesting robot that then proceeds to try to declothe or derobe Loki. The fun part about this is that it very much, in my opinion, is Herbie. For those who don't know, Herbie first appeared on the Hanna-Barbera Fantastic Four comic. He was the replacement for Johnny, because Johnny at the time, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, was not in the series because at that time he was licensed to be in a separate film by himself. So they created this character called Herbie. What did Herbie stand for? Humanoid Experimental Robots, B-Type Integrated Electronics, HERBIE, Herbie. Yeah, so basically Herbie was a creation of Mr. Fantastic and Master Zar, the Xandarian, and they created Herbie to be a Galactus alarm. And basically, but in this case, I think it became like from that cartoon. And by the way, this is the early 1970s cartoon. Yeah, the 1970s cartoon that MF Doom sampled a lot in a lot of his films, or a lot of his movies, excuse me. So you got this Herbie, this humanoid experimental robot, and it's doing the things that Herbie does. Herbie's always been like kind of a quirky, malfunctioning goofball. But in this case, I really think, based on my theory, that the TVA are in a quantum bubble within the quantum realm, or a time bubble within the quantum realm. I really do think that with the theory that has already been presented, or with the speculation that the Fantastic Four have been lost in the quantum realm since the 60s or something like that. And if that's the case, it's possible that this really is Herbie, and the TVA at some point confiscated it from the Fantastic Four, or some variation thereof. Or it's just, again, another friendly nod. The thing about Marvel is that they like to give you shit to speculate about and run with, and shit, you can't help but run with it because it's so close to like stories that we know and love from a comic perspective. But we also know that they can give us a fresh take on it while giving a beautiful homage or nod to the original content. So Herbie is now canon, and he's been in the comic books over the years. At one point, he's had some interesting scenarios. But anyway, I do think that the TVA either stole or repossessed Herbie from the Fantastic Four for whatever reason. Maybe we'll find out that that's the case. Was good, Coach East, was good. Yeah, so after he gets stripped of his attire, his fine leathers from Asgard, now he's forced to sign documents of everything he's ever said, and every time he adds a word or a statement, it adds another sheet that he needs to sign. So at this point, Loki's being like, okay, I see what's up. Y'all fucking with me. Fucking, I'm gonna sign it. Let me move on. Then he's transferred to another room. And in this room, it gets a little weirder. Now he's asked to verify whether or not he's a robot and if he has a soul, et cetera, et cetera. And he cautiously walks through the scanner at the behest of the little guy. And then a pic of his temporal aura is taken. And I'm sure there's going to be some reference to that matters at some point, since they took all the time effort to put that there. But we do know that the temporal aura is how they is the evidence that they acquired to identify people who are violating the sacred timeline. So then he moves along after making it through this, realizing he's not a robot, even though he had doubts, whatever. And here's where it gets weird, as if it wasn't already weird. Loki enters a waiting area, and again there's that guy, the disgruntled son of the Goldman Sachs board member, and he's being an asshole still. And so in that assholism, the guard says, take a ticket, and he says, no, I'm not taking the ticket. What you gonna do about it? And then he walks off and through the turnstile. Dude tells Loki, take a ticket. Loki's like, hey, it's only two of us. What the hell? And he's like, take it. So Loki, at this point, just like, okay, I'll play the game. I'll see where this goes. He grabs a ticket and he keeps it moving. Now Loki's at this point where he's just like, okay, I don't even know what the fuck this is, and I really shouldn't be here. At which point, Miss Minutes comes up. Miss Minutes is a cool little name, because it's like, if you think about the whole thing of what's happening, a person who violates the timeline has created a branch, which means they're missing the minutes of what their current timeline is. They're missing time. They're on a different timeline. So Miss Minutes is the one who comes to provide clarification, and I think that's pretty cool. So she goes into her whole Jurassic Parky exposition about time and history and what happened. And so one of the things that immediately stood out to me about Miss Minutes' discourse was, first and foremost, she talks about there was a war of the timelines that she called a multiverse war. This multiverse war was then thwarted by the timekeepers, who then merged all of the various timelines and multiverses into one single sacred timeline. And then this sacred timeline has been what they protect and guard, and that's what the Time Variance Authority has been established to do. People like Mobius and Mobius, Judge Juju, Hunter B, they're all members or created by the what is known as the Timekeepers. And the Timekeepers, basically, they're angels that work and protect this sacred timeline from being broken into multiverse again, because when a variant like a Loki or the disgruntled son of the Goldman Sachs board member, or that strange scroll we saw in the tracksuit, when those variants create their separate timelines or whatever, it creates a nexus event, and then that starts a branch in time. So then those time splits lead to multiverses, and then multiverses of madness, as Miss Minutes continues to express. And ultimately, those multiverses will end up converging at different points and creating wars where these different timelines battle for supremacy, and only one timeline will survive. For those who are familiar with comic lore and things like that, what we're talking about is Secret Wars. Secret Wars is where various universes came connected at certain points at what they at these nexus points, and then you got these various villains and heroes kind of feeling like the other is invading their space, and just insanity ensues. And ultimately, I'm all for Secret Wars, so bring on fucking Doctor Doom. But yeah, So what's interesting about this whole timekeepers and timelines and this sacred timeline and this idea of multiverses and the threat of multiverse war and secret wars is that the original reason why the timekeepers had to come into play was because there were predecessors of them known as time twisters who were not as benevolent, not as divine as them, and kind of did some shit in different ways, which led to the wars. So they haven't really expounded on this in the show, but maybe they will, maybe they won't. We shall see. But if you think about this idea of these nexus points or these nexus events, which is what happened when Loki got a hold of the Tesseract in Endgame. That's a nexus event, which results in him deviating from the course or the proposed timeline that the timekeepers have said is right, and he's creating a new space. WandaVision mentioned Wanda as a nexus being. So nexus beings are beings that are actually fixed individuals or fixed points of reference within all multiverses. What that means is that Wanda is always Wanda. There is no multiple Wandas. Wanda is a fixed point in the multiverse. She will always be Wanda. She will always do what she does, and everything that happens she can, in other words, people can access multiverses through Wanda. She's a nexus being. So that's really interesting that they're talking about nexus events and nexus points right after we saw WandaVision, and then Wanda's going to be in Doctor Strange, and then Doctor Strange is called the Multiverse of Madness. It's all coming together. Fucking Marvel rocks. So, also interesting point when we talk about nexus points, and understanding what Wanda is, which is basically Tigger, because she's the only one. Howard the Duck came to Earth through a nexus event. That's what created the variation of him coming from his universe into the universe where we exist. On his multiverse, the ducks dominate. Some weird shit. It's hilarious, but whatever. And in the old movie, the Spielberg movie from like the late 80s, they basically had opened a nexus event when they opened the doorway that allowed for Howard to be pulled into our realm. So there's a lot of history that relates indirectly to the TVA and what they do and the timekeepers and everything that's going on. So Marvel through this series is basically opening up the floodgates on what the fuck is going on, and it's brilliant, man. I can't even front. I'm just like I'm like, this show has taken it to a level that I didn't even know that they were gonna go that fast. Like one episode is so dense with like information and explanatories about the greater Marvel universe and where we're gonna go. It's ridiculous. So all that back to get to the point that Loki has is in line with his ticket, and the disgruntled dude refused, like he doesn't have his ticket, and then he lies about the ticket, and he gets pruned. Pruned means that they've erased, that they basically clipped or pruned the branch, the fracture of time, which is pretty cool terminology. So now all of that was just the intro to the show. Now we get into the actual show, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, pretty sick. We now in the show 1549 frames. Mobius and Mobius. The M is for Mobius. Owen fucking Wilson. Owen fucking Wilson comes in, and immediately, like, his presence is felt, like the way he's bringing Mobius to life, unquestionably amazing. So now, a Hunter squad is murdered. Mobius is investigating. They are trying to figure out what's happening. A kid shows up speaking French, and then they speak French back and forth, and then Mobius uses a stick figure to help the kid ID the perp. Again, a stick figure. How do you identify a person with a fucking stick figure? I don't understand it. It makes no sense. So, stick figure IDs. The kid points to this the stained glass, which has this red demon-esque figure with horns and a blue tongue. And then, you know, everybody's all like, Mephisto, Mephisto. And I trolled a few people online and like, oh, did you see Mephisto? Fun part, I didn't actually see the episode when I posted on Facebook. Did you see Mephisto in the first episode? That was just luck like a mug. I had no idea that there was going to be anything that would confuse people to think Mephisto was presented again. So I have to pat myself on the back for a unplanned troll that actually worked very well. But yeah, so there's this demon, red demon with the blue tongue and horns, and everybody's all like Mephisto. But the fact is, the blue tongue gives it away. The kablooey gum that the kid has that turned his mouth blue, all of those things are allusions to trickery. That's tricks. That's the tricks. So if you understand what the kablooey gum is, that's actually from old comics, like the old early comics in the 60s and whatever. In the back, they had the ads and the promos for a bunch of different shit. They would have this trick gum, like same stuff that you can find in the old magic shops and stuff. And the trick gum, when you put it in your mouth, it turns your mouth blue. So the gum turning his mouth blue reflects tricks, and then the demon with the horns, which are the horns of Loki's helmet, and then the blue tongue, because remember Loki was born blue. He's a blue trickster. So it's a very simplistic allusion to the fact that Loki is the villain of the show, and that he is the one that is causing all of the turmoil with the TVA and slowly murdering all of their squads. So yeah, as you said, Kaz, there's no Mephisto talk, except when I troll. And I'll probably troll some more because it's fun. And for some reason, people really want Mephisto, but I'm wagering that most people don't even know who Mephisto is. Um, but anyway, so now we get through this moment, and Loki's on trial, and he's before Judge or Juju Magatha Raw. But yeah, Judge Juju, she says that he does a sequence violation 72089, whatever the fuck that is. It's pretty cool. Actually, I know what 720 is. 720 means an infinity loop. That's 360 twice. So the time variation is that he's creating these time variations and these infinity loops where he's going to be trapped going through the same cycle of situations. She asks him, how did he plead? How does he plead? And Loki goes and proceeds to pontificate ad infinitum about being a god and about being this and that and blah, 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 blah. To which she doesn't really pay attention. And then she was like, so... And he's like, well, if you really want to get to it, it's the Avengers you should be after, because the Avengers are the ones who violated time. And that's how I got the Tesseract in the first place. I'm just being me. They gave me the Tesseract because they came and did this, that, and the third. And she was like, well, no. They were doing it they're supposed to, and you were not. And he's like, puppy cuck. Nobody dictates my fate. Nobody tells me what to do. Nobody owns me. And Loki doesn't really sit well with this, so he says, I'm about to show you what I'm about. And he's like, boom, bit, boom, and nothing happens. So he's like, boom, bit, boom, and nothing happens. And then he does his little section, his pelvic sorcery, nothing happens. And they're all laughing. They're like, oh, magic don't work here in the TVA. Sorry. So at this point, it's been made very clear, as Judge Juju has stated, she's like, yo, this is not your story, and it never was. This is not about you. You're not going to do anything special. You're wasting our time. So at this point, he's like, oh, but you don't know me. You don't know what I'm capable of. And then at this point, Mobius jumps in and is like, well, I know what you're capable of. Let me have him. And then so that's that. So he recruits Loki to have a conversation, and thus begins what I call the deconstruction of Loki's ego. And from here on, it's just pure dialogue, and it's brilliant. These mugs are going back and forth, tick for tat. And the best thing about it, we're talking about Loki, the god of mischief, the dude that be shutting people down with monologues. Mobius breaks him down. Doesn't like it's like he's bobbing and weaving through everything Loki's throwing at him, and then throwing jabs and dodging and uppercuts, and he's just Loki can't keep up. Mobius is really literally shutting Loki down, leaving him without words and scaring him, to be honest. Like there's multiple times where Loki's like, what is this place? Where am I? What is really going on? Like he's in disbelief about everything. Particularly when they're walking and Loki looks out the window, and Mobius like, yeah, take a look. And Loki looks, and it's this vast, elaborate Asimovian sci-fi wet dream. I mean, that is straight out of a Isaac Asimov book. The look and feel of it, it just, oh my goodness, it just gives me chills. Just imagining seeing that was amazing. So he asked Mobius, he's like, thought you said there was no magic here. And if you understand that statement, it's a very interesting query, because Thor said that magic was just science that we didn't understand. Okay. Doctor Strange has revealed that magic is actually something else. It's not a science. Not a science in the sense of technology, but it's a science in the sense of cosmic energy and all these different variations of this, that, and the third. What's interesting though is that Loki could not use magic in the TVA, which means magic is not the same as the magic of technology. So they're now giving us a more clearer distinction between the concept of magic, which they've already established over time with Doctor Strange and Wanda Vision, but we're now getting a clear cut reference to the fact that there is a such thing as this technology that is magical, but then there's a such thing as magic that has nothing to do with technology. We're now in a new space. So at this, like, if you really pay attention to the way that looked, there was a scene where during I can't remember if it was I think it was in Doctor Strange, and there was this like this, or it might have been Ant-Man, but there was this bubble, and that's why I mentioned the time bubble. But there was this bubble, and inside of that bubble was a massive, complex Asimovian city, and this is what I think the TVA is. I think the reason why time has no effect there in the same ways, just like when you know how when Ant-Man and everybody else, all their time travel is accomplished through the quantum realm. The reason why all this happens is because the TVA is in a time bubble, a protected sphere inside of the quantum realm. And that is the safe place that they exist, where things like infinity stones and time and magic don't have any effect. They're beyond all of that because they're in the quantum realm. So again, Loki's making his threats about burning the place down. Mobius is going with him like, yeah, let's burn it down. You can use all the paperwork I got to deal with your ass with to start the fire. Loki then, switches, and then you hear something about the Nightmare Department, and I don't know what that's about. And I know there's a lot of people that probably want to speculate on the Nightmare Department, and I really want to too, but I ain't fucking with Marvel like that on this one because I know better. So there's a Nightmare Department that Mobius was like, man, I'll help you burn that one down. But I think that there might be a play on that because, for one, if you think about what the TVA is, then they wouldn't have anything to do with nightmares to have a Nightmare Department. But if it's conjecture, meaning a Nightmare Department, like meaning like it's the bureaucracy department, it's the department where all the most horrific, boring paperwork and shit they don't want to do, it's a nightmare in there. That's that department. So I don't think it means literally nightmare, but yeah, it's interesting. And so now we're in these moments where Mobius is continuing to break down Loki's ego and kind of dismantle his whole character. He's doing a character profile that is like so intense, it would make the FBI like just swoon over this. So, but there's these key things that Mobius says, like he mentions that time passes differently here. I've talked about how I feel about that. Mobius tells him that he specializes in particularly dangerous variants. To which Loki says, "Oh, like me?" He was like, "No, no, no, you're just a pussycat." I thought that was also interesting because if Loki is an insignificant violator of the sacred timeline, then what constitutes a dangerous variant on a level beyond that? That's where it gets interesting. I'm assuming that at some point through this series, something will emerge that demonstrates this. Obviously, there's going to be something that goes wrong, maybe at the behest of Loki, or maybe at the behest of the timekeepers. But somebody gonna fuck something up, and the result is going to be something else that's going to result into timeline splitting, the sacred timeline dismantling, and multiverse exists, which makes perfect sense when you think about what's going on with Spider-Man. Again, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and who knows what the I mean, at this point, anything's possible, and I think that's the whole point of this scenario. So one of the things that I did like about the TVA in this, as we enter this room, what I call the debriefing room, The TVA uses outmoded and outdated technology that is mixed with ultra futuristic technology, which creates a very nostalgic, again, um, ancient future. Like, it looks like some shit from the old sci-fi that people came up with in the 30s. You know, early Flash Gordon, a lot of Isaac Asimov stuff, a lot of Philip K. Dick type shit. But then at the same time, it's combined in its old antiquated look with like really futuristic presentations and results. So that was a pretty cool look to everything that they're doing. So now Mobius decides to take Loki on a ride to his life, and he's breaking down to him like all the different things that he is and what he's about. And one particular cool moment was the realization that Loki was DB Cooper. DB Cooper was a guy from in the 70s that stole this money from like on a plane and through this whole scenario of bullshit and then disappeared. And just like in the show, the money was found scattered over many different miles in many different counties, but the man himself was never found, or at least never identified. So it kind of fits in that Loki could possibly be somebody like DB Cooper. I mean, at this point, by the fact that Loki said he lost a bet with Thor, which is why he even was doing the whole heist, lends me to think that Loki could be the guy on the grassy knoll. Loki could be a lot of different people in history that are unidentified and that we can't find. The whole trickster element. So then Loki has this moment where he's like, "Oh, where were you guys when I was doing these things? You guys approved this." And then Mobius like, I won't say approval, but let's just say that's not even our concern. We focused on time." So Mobius then proceeds to break down Loki to the summation that his life is just here. He's just here to provide suffering, pain, and death, and that ultimately his greatest purpose or glorious purpose is to make other people find the best in themselves. In other words, Loki's primary purpose in time and in reality is to help the Avengers become. And I think there was no greater blow to Loki's ego than that moment. And I don't think that Loki will be the same after this. I think that Loki is being forced through these experiences to come to the terms of who he was by the time he got to Infinity War in a matter of moments. That was a period of years, and he's being pushed into that moment very quickly. And so Mobius and Loki's little antics are interrupted by Hunter B, saying that we got a situation. Another Hunter squad has been murdered. So he tells Loki, "I'll be right back." But of course, Loki, being the mischievous scamp that he is, had escaped because he had pickpocketed Mobius of the device that controls his collar during a mishap that occurred between them. So Loki's gone. Mobius and Hunter B are arguing about what to do about Loki. And then he goes back to Loki. Loki's gone. He realizes, oh shit. And now we get to Loki, and he's lurking around the TVA. He finds Casey and tells Casey that, give him the Tesseract, or he's going to gut him like a fish. To which Casey asks, "What's a fish?" And then a hilarious moment of like just ridiculous banter again goes through. And the end result, the gut you like a fish is very much, what's that movie that had the guy scream, the guy with the mask. And yes, this is very much MCU's Doctor Who. That's another thing that absolutely reminds me of on a lot of different levels. The fact that the TVA is very much in a TARDIS, a time and relative dimension in space, in the quantum realm. That's their bubble. And the fact that technically Mobius in the comics, everybody looked like Mobius. Mobius and Mobius was most of the characters in the TVA, which was very interesting. I thought they were going to do that, but they did not. But anyway, so Casey proceeds to go to this drawer, opens it up, hands him the Tesseract. Loki looks in the drawer, and all he sees is like dozens of Infinity Stones and other weird artifacts, including a very interesting dagger. But we don't know what that dagger is or what any of those objects are. But again, I assume they're Easter eggs or there's some allusion to something that may come later. But nonetheless, Loki sees the stones, and this is where he has his moment. He's already been broken down and reduced to the guy that's only purpose in this world was meant to help other people, Thor, the Avengers, etc., become perfect in their destiny, becoming who they're meant to be. That was Loki's sole purpose. He is a conduit of other people's greatness. Okay. So he was broken down there, and now he sees the Infinity Stones, and he's just like, why do you have these? Kate's like, oh, we get those every once in a while. We get tons of them, and some of us use them as paperweights. So now a lot of people were asking, well, how can these Infinity Stones just be sitting there, and why are they not working? No, they're not magic. So because the Infinity Stones are not magic, the whole idea of magic not working in TVA has nothing to do with it. The reason why these Infinity Stones, including the Tesseract that Loki has, do not work are because Infinity Stones are very specific to the universe in which they were spawned. So you can't take Infinity Stones from Universe 616 and then go to Universe 199999 and then expect those Infinity Stones from 616 to work in that universe. The universe that they're born in are the only universe where those stones work because that's where their properties manifest. So all these various multiverses and timelines will all have their own Infinity Stones, and none of those Infinity Stones will work when they leave their particular timeline or perspective multiverse. So that it's just that simple. And at this point, Loki realizes I'm in a place where the Infinity Stones don't matter. And up to this point, my whole agenda was trying to get these Infinity Stones. And Thanos has been living his whole life trying to get these Infinity Stones. And I know these Infinity Stones and these Infinity Stones. And they ain't shit no more. They mean nothing. This was the moment where not only Loki should have had this, but the entire fandom of Marvel should have reached this moment and realized we're about to go into a space where all the shit you've seen before now is nothing. We just watched Infinity War and Endgame and we thought, holy shit, this is amazing. It's not. That was just the tip of the iceberg. That was the basic fundamental power levels of basic universal principles. We ain't even got to we're now in a space where that shit can be dulled and rendered useless. We're in a whole nother paradigm of power levels. We're about to experience a whole nother level of shitstorm. Can you imagine the level of villainy that's about to take place when you got Infinity Stones being worthless in this arena? When you got, as Loki alluded to, he said, "Is this the greatest power? Is this the ever?" And the truth is no, it's not. It is one of, because again, all they're doing is tracking time or reality. That's it. They're just monitoring one single thing. They're called timekeepers. That's it. They're just timekeepers. Timekeepers. What about the rest of this? I mean, we're still dealing with all these other things. The power cosmic. Like, I mean, the Phoenix Force. Like, we're about to open up a whole world of what in the entire fuck. And yeah, it does work with Dragon Balls, but Dragon Balls don't work with Infinity Stones. And yeah, so this is interesting territory. So now we're at this space. Suddenly out of nowhere, Hunter B shows up and tries to prune Loki. Loki dips, and then it almost hits Casey, to which Casey gets no respect. Like, he's just like, everybody treats him, and whatever. So now Loki's back in his in the briefing room, and he's sitting there having a moment, and he's like, okay, let me look at this, because now I need to rethink this whole timekeepers, this whole sacred timeline thing. So he watches, and the worst thing he could have done, watches his mother die, watches his dad die, then he watches his own death, all within a matter of moments. And death by Thanos is a particularly unpleasing and unsettling thing to watch, particularly Loki's death. So you can imagine how Loki felt in that moment, having all of that trauma hit him at one moment, just boom, boom, boom. So now Loki's in this space where he's like, fuck. And he's laughing to himself, glorious purpose, my fucking ass. And Hunter comes in, and so Loki says, all right, I've had enough of you. And they go at it, and Loki is able to subdue and get her trapped inside of the collar, and he gets her out of the way. So now Loki is sitting there in his existential crises, trying to figure out what it all means and where does that leave him. And he's just like, he's stuck. He's seen his own death. He's seen the death of his father, seen the death of his mother, realized that his mother was killed by his own actions. And all of this goal of being king and ruling things is like, that doesn't exist. It never happened. And Mobius comes in. And Mobius is empathizing with him, and he's like, really, you can see it on his face. He's like, oh shit, like I'm sorry, you weren't supposed to see that yet. I was trying to work my way to that with a little context. And finally, Loki admits, like, I don't enjoy hurting people. I do it because I am the weak, conjuring tricks to instill fear in a desperate attempt to gain control. And Mobius was like, yeah, you do know yourself. Now we can talk. I want to recruit you to find yourself. Come again? So now we get to this cutscene, and we're looking at, again, another TVA hunter squad. And they're in a field, and there's a cloaked figure in the background. Now, looking at that cloaked figure, for me, it felt very, the shape looked very female. And then, we've already established that Loki is looking for Loki. I think we saw Lady Loki at the end doing what she does. And I think it's pretty awesome that they gave us a Lady Loki, or that Lady Loki is the first villain. Because my theory is that I don't know if Lady Loki is going to be the only villain. I'm not sure if multiple Lokis are going to be doing this whole TVA on attack. I'm not sure if Loki is working for someone else, as Loki usually does, because that's something that Mobius alluded to, is that Loki always is in service to someone else to get something that he wants or needs. So that was a very interesting play. And yeah, Loki, okay, you said it right there, Kaz, because Loki has to find himself. And that's what this whole episode was about, was Loki finding himself. So we're dealing with a metaphorical and a literal and an allegorical perspective of Loki finding himself. And Loki stopping himself from doing the shit that, as he admitted, he doesn't enjoy doing. He doesn't enjoy hurting people. He doesn't enjoy killing people. So he's got to stop himself from hurting and killing people. Like, the subtlety of that in terms of the writing, again, I can't stress enough how much Marvel needs to get me in their writing rooms, because not only do I have shit to offer, I literally just want to participate, because the shit they're doing is like ridiculously brilliant. They are going places with their writing that, in this level of a show, with this much humor, with this much special effects and all this extra sci-fi shit, most of the time they don't give you this much deep resonating concepts and this much of a story. I mean, this is one fucking episode. This shit is great. I mean, this is gonna be, Marvel is about to go down in history with changing television now, like in terms of changing how we view series. You can't argue, you can't deny it. This is not even about competition anymore. This is about Marvel fulfilling the idea of being the first, the only, and the best, because they're really doing it on every level. And each one of these series goes to a place that you don't even think about that going. They just go. And this is only one episode, and we've got 6 episodes to go. And if each episode is as dense as this episode, because if you think about it, each series, WandaVision was very personal. It was about her, and it was only about her and her personal experience. Then we get to Falcon and Winter Soldier, and it was about him and his relationship with other people, and about the world, the Earth, and what's going on in the Earth post snap. We're cosmic, we're multidimensional, we're multiverse from jump, and it's letting us know that there is so much shit to really go into, and there's so much shit to talk about, and we're not gonna slack, we're not gonna water it down, we're not gonna hold back, we're not gonna concern ourselves with how you feel about anything. We're just gonna give you the goodies, and we're gonna let you have it. We're gonna let you have every ounce of what we got. We're gonna drain it, we're gonna drip it dry. And that's what they're doing. I can't even begin to think about how ill this show is. Like it's like, damn, are we really here? Are we really getting this? Oh, and while I'm thinking about this sidebar, just thinking about Mobius and Mobius's perfect mustache and haircut. Shout out to the fly nerd barber Tyrus. He cleaned me up the other day, and I wanted to give a shout out to him. He is located on the south side of Chicago, and I will post a link to him soon so that you guys can, if you're interested in getting your haircut, I highly recommend you check him out because brother is fly. He is flyer than fly. As I sip my coffee. So yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, man, this Loki show is on a whole nother level of like amazing. And it fits right in with Doctor Who, and it fits right in with Quantum Leap, and it fits right in with things that have I think that we're gonna see a whole new slew of concepts centered around what this show is giving us. Because, you know, when you think about time travel and you think about time travel movies, there's so many time travel movies that are just like basic. I mean, then there's good time travel movies, and then there's these abstract, artsy time travel movies that really make you think. But at the most fundamental level, the illest thing about the way Marvel is doing time travel, at least the way they've done it up to this point, they took the time to establish the rules and parameters of time travel in their universe. They did this in Endgame. And in Endgame, they let you know the way time travel works is that if I go back in time, the moment I get back in time, let's say I'm trying to get to 1955. I get to 1955, which actually this is Back to the Future's thesis. They just don't get into the multiverse theory too much. But Back to the Future is following the same parameters. You go back in time and you do something, you're changing the present. So when you go back to the present, the world has shifted. Actually, that's the thing that they do differently, is that it technically remains one timeline, I think, but and then you can go back and correct it, which is what Cap supposedly did. But Marvel created these rules. You go back in time. If you change the instant you hit there, it's automatically something different. If you change anything, if you know the butterfly effect, which we saw an extreme butterfly effect with what happened with Hulk and the Tesseract and Loki. That's like huge. That's like dramatic. That's fucked up. But let's go to a simpler level. The statement that Judge Juju said was that the Avengers were supposed to go back in time and were supposed to do what they did. Question is why? The main reason why is, first and foremost, we know the Sorcerer Supreme and the Ancient One are protecting the timeline. But I don't know if they understand. Maybe it looks like, yeah, because in the end game she made it clear, if you do this, you're deviating and creating a new timeline, and this new timeline will create problems, and we can't protect ourselves in this timeline. She understood that these time splits matter, and knowing the Ancient One, she's probably aware of the timekeepers and all of that. I'm pretty sure Doctor Strange is not, and if he is, maybe only in reading about it, but he probably hasn't come across them at any real level. But ultimately, the rules are so solid, and the way the TVA has solidified that the organization of these timelines is based on the fact that if there is a branch, they will prune it, they will clip it, they will cut it off at its root, and that timeline will cease to exist. So when we think about Captain America going back and putting everything back where they got it from, and but Captain America decides to stay in the past. Was that supposed to happen? Probably, because if you think about it, and this is where I started getting into my my deep thought. Captain America being frozen in the ice and waking up in the future and affecting the future, that would have been a time split because he was not supposed to be there. But he went back in time and he decided to stay, and therefore that timeline was corrected, right? Or is that a time split? Because in the comics, there's a certain guy that doesn't like Captain America because Captain America fucks up the timeline and he should not be there. And the effects of Captain America being in the wrong place at the wrong time triggers a series of consequences that ultimately leads to the destruction of his future. That character has this name and he goes by Kang. I don't know if this is going to tie into that because, they're saying that that's over with in terms of Rogers. But when we start talking about secret wars and we start talking about these time violations and these variants, we have to ask ourselves, like, how much of what the Avengers did was supposed to happen and how much of it was only allowed to happen because they happened to decide through Stark's request to keep things in order. Yeah, it's deep. It's deep. And what's up with this black coffee shop in Lakeview area called Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health? That's a long ass name. But man, I'm gonna check that out. So good looking out, Jason. I'm definitely down for looking into that. That's I'm actually interested in that. Yeah. But see, Captain America, while he went back in time, yes, he was in two places at once at certain points in time, which is and should be a time violation. How does that create splits, and why is the TVA okay with some of those moments? Because I'm not exactly sure that he was able. He clipped every branch except his own. Yes, he returned all the stones to their proper places in time and space, but he himself has always been a man out of time. And when he went back in time, he stayed, which means Peggy Carter had to be different in her daily interactions. Peggy Carter had, it's just so many questions about what they mean by it's supposed to happen, which is, I agree with Loki. Like, what the fuck do you mean? Who decides this? And how do you make the decision about what I should or should not do? So the question is does Doctor Strange protect the particular Earth timeline, or does he protect all timelines? Well, I think that's one and the same thing, similar to what we're experiencing with the TVA and the Timekeepers. There is, anytime an event happens in one timeline, that's what those nexus events are what produce alternate timelines. So technically, by protecting your timeline in that way, you're protecting you're preventing the existence of other timelines. So the keeper of the stone, of the time stone particularly, should not in any way have any issues with, or should not be a deviant from the timelines, because he's protecting the stone to keep things from happening. Even though I still question, in Doctor Strange, they said every time you use the time stone, you create an alternate timeline. And they expressed that would lead to chaos and blah, 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 blah. And we know Doctor Strange used that time stone quite a bit in his movies. We know that Thanos used the time stone in Infinity War. So are we saying that those are also time splits that exist that have nothing to do with what happened in Endgame with them going back in time? So they never clipped those branches. Doctor Strange never fixed the time splits that he did on his own when he fucked with the apple, when he fixed the book. Because if you think about it, when Doctor Strange did the time adjustment on the book and put the page back in the book, that means that now the page that Cagliostro had or whatever, Caecilius or whatever, and then the book itself has that same page. So now there are two of those pages in that timeline. That would be a time split, right? It gets really confusing what the fuck the TVA are doing. I don't know if they got their job, on point, or maybe that's what we're gonna find out, is exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. Maybe there is no Captain America anymore in the Marvel universe because they clipped him. They pruned his branch, and he is now restricted and locked down from time. So it's a lot of things to think about and speculate on, and you never know. We might come across Steve Rogers lurking in the TVA. But yeah, so that's interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how all of this is going to play out and how they're going to make this work, because it's a lot. They're doing an amazing job, and they're knocking it out the park with every single one of their actions. And so now, without further ado, I'm going to bring in some of the fly nerds, and so we can have this good young conversation. Who wants to jump in? I'll let a couple of people jump in. So first, I'll bring you in if you down, Kaz. And in the meantime, thank you all to those who watch me on Facebook and on Twitch and on YouTube. We are out, and peace.